What's up, guys? Lex McMahon, Jose Shorty Torres. This is the Twins podcast coming to you live from our studio, the studio of death. Lovely animals everywhere.
This is a very lovely room of death.
No, it keeps you happy, man. It gives you a feeling of warmth. I talk to these guys all the time.
It gives me a sense of fear, and I'm afraid if
I like the gator. I'm like, oh, remember that time we were hanging out in Polk County, Florida? Me, you, the dead chicken I used as bait, then the bang stick. Oh, it's good times.
The only thing I've ever killed is maybe a squirrel, and that's with like a slingshot or a BB gun, but that's probably about it.
Killed is such a harsh word. I prefer harvested.
You know, you sent them to a better life. Maybe
I
they were
did.
struggling. You helped them.
Yeah, it
You never
is.
know.
Anyway, guys, we're here. We're getting ready to do the Furious 5, which is 5 questions to kind of help us loosen up and set the tone to get ready to dive into the meat of our podcast.
All right.
Furious 5, what do you got, Shorty?
First question. What is your favorite type of dog?
Man, without question, it is a lab. They are the best, coolest dogs. I've had labs my whole life. The last one I had, Mister, who just, as my mom would say, went to doggy heaven after 14 and a half years. He was so cool that I didn't want to get another lab again right away. I wanted to kind of take a break. So now, my partner, Jeff Aronson, thank you, Jeff, and
Hi, Jeff.
and his company, Titan Bullies, hooked up an XXL Bully, which I absolutely love. He's
huge.
such a cool dog. At 7 months, he's 96 pounds. Great disposition, super cool, but it's a different dog than the lab. That's for sure. So lab is my favorite dog.
And definitely not as agile.
No.
Is there a funny story with that?
You know, let's just move on. He's okay, fine. The dog jumped out of the fucking car going about 20 miles an hour, and he did like 5 rolls, and I thought he died.
And he got up perfectly fine, which is, if it was a lab, that might have not happened. But, never know.
They're durable. I'll say that. Titan Bullies, durable dogs.
They're very durable. I play fight with them all the time. That guy is now getting really, really strong. He's only, half the size?
Yeah, he's supposed to be 180 to 200 pounds.
Ah.
But a sweetheart.
So am I. But, whatever.
Yeah, you're never going to be 100. Oh, wait, you were 180 like a week ago.
Yeah, good times. 175.
So what about you, Shorty? What's your favorite type of dog?
Well, I've always grown up with pit bulls.
Yeah.
But, you remember the good old Target dog?
One with like the eye?
Yeah. Little eye, little Target. Or if you ever seen Next Friday, Chico, which is like, Don't Kick My Dog, which is pretty much what I think it's a British Bull Terrier.
Yep.
Small dog.
Smart dogs.
Small, smart, with a big head.
Yeah.
It sounds
It's
pretty
you.
familiar.
Yeah.
It's me as a dog.
All right.
If I can get it, that's pretty much me.
Okay.
Next one. Least favorite color. So if you're going to get a coloring book, a crayon box, what's the color you use
Easy.
least?
Black. Fuck black, man. Like, it's like depressing. You know, like who wants black? I mean, of course, my 11-year-old daughter is gonna be like a goth chick because she's dressed in black all the time. Yeah. Her nickname, Stefan Struve nicknamed her Wednesday from.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
She's very mean.
yeah.
She's very
How about your favorite color?
Well, favorite color is
Or
white.
least favorite color? I
Least
guess.
favorite
Yes, that's
color
right.
is brown. I think that is the color I probably and
Was that because you pooped your pants once and it was brown?
That's also kind of true.
Okay.
It's one of those things that it's
Happened
just
to
a
me, by the
color
way.
I never use. I use it for like a tree bark and a bench. That's pretty much about it. I never got into brown. Never used it.
Not down with the brown.
Not down with the brown.
All right. What else you got?
One of your favorite fights to watch. So if I'm, somebody new to the sport and you go, dude, you need to watch this fight. This is the fight that got me into this sport. What's your favorite fight to watch? Or at least one of them. Whether it's boxing, MMA, kickboxing, whatever the case may be.
Oh, man. So for boxing, I'm going to say Ike Corte versus the Golden Boy. That was an incredible fight. I was there. My dad used to get us tickets to go see boxing fights in Vegas all the time. And what was cool about it is Ike Corte was, I think, from Congo or one of the African countries. I'm pretty sure it was Congo. And he came walking, his ring walk had big African drums and dudes playing it live real time. But it didn't stop there. They were cage side or ringside and they played music and he fought to the tempo of the music that they played. So as they would pick up the pace, he would get more frenetic and pick up the pace. They would slow it down. He would slow it down. It was so cool. I think objectively he won the fight, but of course Oscar is Oscar, and he got the decision. But it was a tremendous fight. So that's probably my favorite boxing fight that I've seen personally. And I've seen a lot of different ones, but that was definitely the one that I liked. MMA, man, there's been so many. Literally I've seen thousands of MMA fights, and there's some that definitely stand out. But, man, that's a tough. Nate Marquardt versus Tyron Woodley, I think, was one of my favorites when they fought in Strikeforce. I'm biased. I've managed Nate. It was when he won the championship. So, and he put he put a beating on Tyron, like elbows. It was a tremendous finish in the corner of the cage.
Was that? I think that's Tyron's only knockout loss too.
Yes,
so that's saying a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so many, man, so many. So that's tough. I'm gonna stick with Corte De La Hoya. What about you?
For me, I am a huge boxing fan. That is a sport that I watched growing up. My father made me watch these fights. Whether they're on late night HBO or pretty much just Comcast, whatever, even pay-per-view. My favorite two fighters are Manny Pacquiao and Miguel Cotto, in that order. So coincidentally, they ended up fighting against each other. Manny Pacquiao was just bumping up weights. I believe this is his 6th weight class.
I was to say, Manny fought in like 19 different weight classes or something, right?
He fought, I think he skipped quite a few as well. Like he started at 108, won his first world championship at 112, his last one at 154. Like that's a
big
ways
jumps.
up, Me, I can gain the weight, but I definitely can't fight it that way.
Yeah, you're not going back down again.
Yeah, I'm not going back down, definitely. But that fight was just spectacular because Manny Pacquiao had to prove himself against a bigger, stronger, and possibly at times faster guy, and he had to adapt. I was able to drop Manny.
Well, I think that's where you see how incredible of a competitor Manny is.
Yeah, and that's the sport. You already know that if you don't adapt in the first round or minutes into the fight, you're not going to survive, especially if you're getting beat up. In that fight, he ended up adapting and then demolishing the Puerto Rican star, after that. So it's a huge fight for me. And then after that, I think he won 2 more belts.
Yeah.
So for me, that's my favorite fight to watch, but I'm just a Manny Pacquiao fan in general. So that's just any fight for me is a huge fight.
Even though Manny's dad ate the dog.
Even though Manny's dad ate the dog, my dad...
The family dog. It's like if we went outside and took Bodie, my 96 lovable XXL bully, and throw his big ass on the grill and ate him, that's what it would be like.
That's a good week of food. Maybe a month, honestly, in my family.
Bullshit, dude. Shorty, the way you eat, it's like 2 days max.
Yeah, that's...
Dude, I've seen what you do. A whole box of cereal at night at 2 a.m. when you're depressed. 17 pancakes when you got something to prove. I've seen it all, bro. I know what you're capable of.
I can do a lot of things.
You could. Not a slab of meat left on the turkey carcass. You're that type of guy.
Nothing but bone. I don't save anything for later. If you could go back in time and relive one moment, what would it be?
So, relive one moment in my lifetime?
That's a hard one.
Man, that is a tough one. You got me a little stumped because there's some answers like the day you got married, which was an awesome, moment. All my buddies, marrying the woman I love. Super cool, obviously. I'm going to go, though, when my daughter Addison was born, because I really didn't want to be a dad. I was still kind of selfish and self-centered, and I thought, it's really going to cramp my style. And I also had helped raise my niece, and because her mom had passed away, so I felt like I had done it, and I really didn't want to do it again. But as soon as I held Addison and I saw her and got to kind of meet her, so to speak, man, I loved that kid instantly. And then I asked the doctor if I could cut the umbilical cord with my pocket knife, which I proceeded to take out and flip open. And the nurse, the doctor, my wife, everybody just was like, no! And I'm like, but why? So, yeah, I would say if I could go back and experience that again, because it was complete joy. It really was. My heart was full, man.
That's awesome. I don't know per se. I mean, there's just a lot of moments that were just more fun and nostalgic for me. But I believe achievement-wise would be I graduated from my university with my bachelor's degree.
First in your family, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
First in my family to graduate college. And then
By the way, it kind of ties into the theme of our show today, the come up.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute, but good on you.
I won my second national championship, the first to ever do it in history, and that qualified me for Worlds, which later on that year I won Worlds the second time as well, the first do it in history. So I graduated and won the same day. So I graduated college, and literally hours later, I fought in a cage. And when I walked out for the fight, I walked out with my diploma and cap and gown.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's awesome, man.
The funny thing was when they were like, because I won by a decision. And I knew I won the fight,
right.
But when they're making a decision, they're like, and college grad, like the winner is, and college graduate. And I'm like, did he graduate college too? Like,
wait a minute.
Yeah, and then they raised my hand. I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. So that is my biggest thing. It's just a great time for my family. I'm a people person, so I need to make people smile. And that's for me a huge achievement. All right, next question. So, if you're able to live in any single movie or cinematic universe, which one would it be?
You're trying to trick me, Shorty. I know you are. You're trying to get me to say Marvel, the whole Marvel universe, because I know during quarantine we've watched like every fucking episode, and they were all good. I was enlightened, for an old guy, 49 years old, seeing some stuff I hadn't seen before. So thank you to both, you and Rami, my roommates. But I'm not going to do it. Too easy, man. I'm going to the time of Rob Roy.
So you're going outside the box and bring that box way back.
Way back. So the guy who's like kind of the main character in Rob Roy, he's got some great quotes, and two of them are, a wee whiff of quim in the morning for you, my lord. But then my favorite, which is, love is but a dung pile, Betty, and I am a cock who climbs upon it to crow. Like, when you're able to throw out some stuff like that, dude, that's a cool time to live. So Rob Roy, bro. Rob Roy all day, I'm there.
I'm offended by that quote. I don't even know what to say. I'm writing a letter.
You can write your letter all day, but just remember, I am a cock upon the dung pile, crowing. Cock-a-doodle-doo! All right, guys, so that was our Furious 5. Good times. Learned a lot about, both Shorty and I. Some of it not so interesting. Some of it downright scary, man. But it's okay. It's okay. It's sort of weird.
Yeah.
Weird. It's challenging for me to look at a guy that has nail polish on his hands and his feet and have him say to me, yes, I would love to live in the time of the Wizard of Oz.
See that flexibility? Just sad.
Yeah, you need to stretch more, bro.
I'm pretty sure my knee popped out of place.
Yeah. Anyway, so listen, man, you and I, we've gotten to know each other very well over it's now 5 years?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we first met in Bahrain, and then, you came and fought in Titan and did so many great things for us there, and then, as you've advanced onto the UFC and then onto, Brave and other places, and, we've done a lot together. We've, traveled the world together and experienced a lot of highs and lows together. So we've gotten to know each other's story pretty well, and, we have a lot of parallels, even though I'm like, twice your age. And
different spectrums, but the come up is, even though it's a different story, it all comes up to the same thing.
It's a universal concept, right? Which is truly coming from nothing and ascending the mountain and kind of making it to a certain point. And I don't think that you really ever stop, but we've at least made it. Like we're like the Jeffersons, dude. Like we're moving on up. We've made it to a certain point, and we're eating
all the pie.
That's right. Every piece of pie. So, Shorty, why don't you, for the benefit of everybody, like give us a kind of a thumb sketch of your come up, some of the things that you've dealt with, and kind of where you are now.
I am nowhere. Nothing. I haven't come.
Haven't fought in a year and a half.
Different state. That's really
living in a garage in Dean Thomas's house,
that's it.
or sleeping on my couch, sweating your ass off.
That's pretty much about it. Your story. No, for me, I grew up in the streets of Chicago, but eventually moved to Berwyn, Cicero, and stayed there.
By the way, Cicero's like the hood, dude. Like I didn't realize how much it was.
It's Al Capone's old neighborhood. And when Al Capone...
Actually didn't know that. Just learned that.
My high school was built by Al Capone.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. So the auditorium it's actually a landmark in Illinois. It's painted all around, but in the ceiling it's painted gold. Real gold.
Right.
And that's because of Al Capone. And he has tunnels in the back that would lead to certain places in the city.
Is it called like Al Capone High?
No, I wish so.
That'd be awesome. That would be the ultimate fuck you to your political correctness. Crime does pay. Mm-hmm. That's how I came up, you know?
But it's crazy because, you know, even though he was in Cicero, he ran all of Chicago and all the suburbs. And so when he eventually went to jail and died, everyone from gangs to mob bosses, all that tried to take over. You know, my father ended up being a gang when he moved from Puerto Rico to New York and eventually to Chicago.
Same gang from New York to Chicago?
No,
is it just
different gang.
But
and,
both Latin gangs.
Yeah. And I don't know per se if he wasn't a gang in New York, but by the time he got to Chicago, my grandmother was just not the best person in the world. You know, she didn't have money, so she ended up doing what she needed to do to survive, whether it was selling drugs, being a prostitute, stuff like that, where, you know, it was different. My father didn't have a father growing up, so when it came to raising us, it wasn't the best possible thing. You know, my brother being 8 years older got the worst of it because that's like the fresh, you know, like that's your mistake child in a sense. You know, if you have the second child, it's like, all right, well, we did the first one, probably didn't work. We're going to do it better than the second one. And hey, that was the second one.
Or I mean, what we noticed raising our kids is that, you know, you're so cautious with the first kid, and then you realize, well, you know what, I didn't break it, so who really cares on the second one? And you actually pay less attention. So it could go both ways.
You know, so it's one of those things that, you know, my father wasn't the best father, and I was also a cocaine, weed, and steroid baby born into a trap house, you know. So in my house, we made drugs, we sold drugs, and it was a part of the bad scene growing up. And for me, I had my father.
But it was normal to you, right?
But it was normal because almost every family in the neighborhood did it.
Right.
You know, you would think like, oh, you're probably that one family. No, every family was involved in some type of drugs, was involved in some type of violence. I had the police camera in the corner of every light. Like, I didn't grow up in the projects, but it wasn't far away. So, you know, that neighborhood in general just wasn't the best.
Right, it was a rough neighborhood.
Everyone you grow up with is slowly going to start to integrate into gangs, the violence, the drugs, and especially as a teenager, you start to experiment. But by the time I started to experiment, my brother was that test child that's like, hey, man, I did it. Don't do it. If I went right, maybe you should go left.
Right.
You know, so...
But so one of the things about your dad that, I mean, he wasn't much bigger than you.
Yeah, he's literally my size, and he was a goon.
That's what I was saying. He's not a big dude, but yet he was an enforcer.
Yeah, he was an enforcer, and it's crazy because my dad... Like, he was a bright person, but when you're on steroids, cocaine, weed, whatever the case may be, whatever drug, you don't, you know, you lose all that sense of credibility. You're just gonna do whatever. And for him, he would tell me stories of like, there was one guy in the middle that I was supposed to beat up for the money, but there's like 15 guys around him. He's like, well, I guess I'm getting my ass kicked today because he still went to try to go do his job. Right. You know, that's just how he was. You know, my dad's done some extremely violent things, but, you know, so be it. Everything's always kept dark with the gangs. You know, that's just how it is with that. But, you know, my dad teaching us was always tough love. You know, like, I didn't have a military upbringing like yourself, but it was the fact of, like, if you fell, you pick yourself up. If you did something wrong, I'm kicking your ass. If I did something wrong, I'm kicking your ass. You know, it was just one of those things that my dad always took it out on us. So I naturally learned how to fight and defend myself because my brother being 8 years older and my father always being...
You were also used to taking a beating because your dad, he dispensed tough love.
And for you know, I always say when people used to ask me, like, what do you have to thank for your family? I was like, well, my mother spending all of her free time taking me to karate and all the sports that I did because I was baseball, football, basketball, wrestling, all that stuff all around, you know, the year. My brother for being that negative / positive role model would be like, hey, you should go left instead of right. And well, my dad... Well, no one's gonna hit me as hard as my dad hit me, so yeah, you know, I'm tough. And it's the positive way to look at it. And so for me, I looked at them, I was like, man, I don't have a positive role model. I need something for me. It was Power Rangers, Dragon Ball Z, all these Ninja Turtles, stuff, whatever I could see. And so I used that as they fought for good. I want to fight for good and trying to live out my father's goals as well, fighting. I ended up doing it. But the funny thing was, if people don't know, I was actually voted class clown when I graduated high school.
Why does that surprise me, man?
Right? Like, I thought it was going to be like fattest person or biggest appetite type of thing. But class clown, which makes a lot of sense. I was suspended a lot. And it's literally just for talking. So I ended up, and for doing a lot of senior pranks to all the deans and principals and stuff like that. So good times. But no school wanted to accept me. Like every school was
When you're talking about school, you're talking about universities.
College, stuff like that. And they're like, no school wants to accept you. If you come in, you're on academic probation. So if you got a D or lower, you're cut. That's it. And they take all your money. And for me, I'm not going to get a scholarship because of my grades. Maybe financial aid and being a Latino. but that's pretty much about it. So it's like, let me go. I have 3 choices. Work at the pizzeria that I'm working at, and that's summer for 80 hours a week, which is, I was making like $50 a day, which sucked.
Yeah.
I can join the Marines because Master Bob was a Marine Recon.
Yep.
Or I could go to college. Me, especially during that time, you know, we were still overseas in the Middle East. I was like, I kind of don't want to do this. Let me go try junior college first, and then I'll try the military.
Right.
Because my coach, after every single practice, is like, all right, kids, go home, get a job, join the Marines. That's just what he instilled in us. And
Yes, I love Master Bob, man.
Yeah, and that's just what he instilled in us. A lot of the kids, if they don't do anything in life, they're like, I'm going to just do the military. I might as well be productive in some sort of way.
Right.
You know, so I ended up going to junior college, and financial aid paid the whole year. For people who don't know, junior college is way cheaper than the university, and it's practically the same classes, general education-wise. And so I ended up taking my first class was psychology, and I ended up failing the first test. And I'm like, damn, I gotta take this seriously. I took it so serious. I ditched all my friends, went to a different school, ditched pretty much everyone, my family, my relationship, my friends, all that stuff. Focused on wrestling. Eventually, after the 2 years, I became Phi Theta Kappa, which was National Honor Society. My first ever 3.0, eventually got to a 3.8. Ended up achieving a full scholarship to my next university, and I ended up becoming an All-American as well in wrestling. But in high school, I was only a state qualifier. I didn't even win a match in high school.
So let me ask you this, Shorty, because I'm hearing several things that are kind of important.
Yeah.
And I know things that have been important to me, and kind of my come up story, which is the role or importance of role models. Mm-hmm. When you don't necessarily have them at home, right? Your dad wasn't really a role model. Yeah. Like, I'm not being negative. Yeah. And like, he was a gang. I mean, but he was a gang enforcer. Yeah. You were living in a trap house. Like, that's not gonna get you to be the president of the United States, right? So you needed that influence to come from other people. Master Bob, a Marine recon guy, martial artist. He taught you a lot of kind of tough love, but also showed you love and helped you, I think, grow quite a bit. Even Londo, your brother, helped you make some decisions in terms of right or left, and and going into the street life or staying away from the street life. So he was a positive role model. I mean, I think that you've had them throughout your career. What role have these role models played, and how important have they been to you?
And there's a reason why I started my foundation to keep kids inside the gym and off the streets, because I look at my father and brother full of...
So your foundation's Team Shorty Foundation, right?
Yeah, and these, both my brother and father were full of athletic skill, even way more than me now entering my prime, and that's saying a lot. My brother's been stabbed, he's been hit with in the head with a bat multiple. He's technically died twice, and they've resuscitated him twice. And he still could easily perform much better than me in certain things. He probably sprint faster. I mean, he has still sutures in his stomach. It's how great he was. And the problem was there was no direction. There was no someone holding your hand sometimes to go, maybe you should just
no
do
discipline,
this.
no.
And so for my father and my brother, they just kind of went outside and lived life. The only thing they knew, especially in their upbringing, was to make money. There was nothing else. And it wasn't, hey, let's spend years trying to perfect your craft doing a sport. Let's just make money. So that was drugs, violence, whatever you could to do that. And for me, it ended up being the gym. The gym taught me morals. It taught me a lot of responsibility. It taught me how to take care of others, how to interact with others. And with Master Bob being the mentor and father figure that I've always needed, he gave me that tough love, like you're saying, of you should do this. And it was more of me listening. And that's the hardest thing for a lot of people in general.
What changed that you were receptive? That you opened up and were willing to listen, because you weren't previously.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't always like that, but it was the fact of I would go to the gym, have a great day performance-wise, but then go home and do hood rat stuff with my friends. You know, I was just doing the same thing over and over, and I was looking at other friends that I did look up to that were either gang affiliated or just the cool kids, if you want to say. And
I'm sure you had tons of friends that have died or gone to jail or incarcerated for life. I'm sure
I had that with family. Yeah. I have a cousin who got out of jail for whatever and was shot 6 times, literally 2 days later. So it's crazy that you see things in your own family and you see things in your neighborhood, and you're like, I love my family, I love my neighborhood. That's never going to change, but we're not doing the right thing. We're fitting this neighborhood stereotype, and I want to get out of it.
You got to break the cycle.
And my dad would always say, "You're a shorty trying to come up from the neighborhood," and I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And so let me try to do positive things. Little I know, every time I fought an amateur fight, more people got inspired. And I was like,
Sure.
damn, I'm finally being that hero that I wanted to be accidentally. I'm not
Right.
even trying to be.
You're becoming the role model, you know, and
it
that
just kept
I think
on
sometimes is when you take on that level of responsibility, it actually helps you.
Yeah.
So you're helping other people, but it's helping you.
And you know, I was just doing it for fun because MMA and training and all that stuff was fun, and I wanted to compete to test my skill. And little I know, I'm actually getting better and listening and doing more, and just kept on growing. Little I know, because of Master Bob, just listening, not even trying to achieve these things, I won 10 amateur championships around the country. I was able to go to Brazil, Czech Republic for free.
You traveled the world
Which,
before you were like, what, 20?
yeah, before, see, in my neighborhood, kids don't get out of the city, nevertheless the state. So for me to get out of the country, because of fighting, I was like, damn it, I could actually do this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy because I would mind fuck myself and go, oh, I'm fighting for the national championship, and I know I could easily beat this guy, but for some reason mentally I just would freeze up because I'm thinking so big of the moment. But then I'd win, and I'm like, damn, I could actually do this. Maybe if I actually believed in myself, I might be able to do something.
Well, you know what's interesting to me is you talk about kind of this idea of the come up where you transcend what you were born into, you know, what your reality was. And if you look at it now, I mean, you are a hero to a lot of people. You have a lot of fans all over the world, but here you're a kid who grew up, you know, on the rough and tumble streets of Chicago, of Cicero. You know, drugs and violence were pervasive in your family life. You now count, you know, many senior business executives as friends. You count royalty as a friend. You know, Sheikh, you know, Hamid.
Sheikh Hamid.
You know, it's pretty amazing that, you know, just because you're so genuine and you have fought so hard to make it up, that really it's like you're not limited by where you've come from and what your story is. I mean, you really, like, you're rubbing elbows with royalty, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know, with business executives, with politicians, with all kinds of people, because you've got a great message, you know, and you're a great leader within, you know, your community.
I've been able to, with Master Bob, been able to pass a bill through the Senate and government in Illinois, been able to travel the world, been able to hang out with royalty, and then accomplish stuff that people have never accomplished or even dreamed of accomplishing. Hell, I never even thought about doing the things. You know, I wrote a letter to myself in 8th grade when I graduated junior high, and just for a future self, like, oh, I hope everything's going great, I can't wait to see where you're at. Every time I read it, I was like, man, if I was like my own father, big brother, I would slap the hell out of myself just because of the way I was acting in 8th grade.
Yeah.
You know, so seeing how far I've come up is amazing. But the thing was, and I think it's the biggest thing, is that I tried. I never had that, oh, what if I fail? What if I just tried? And I tried my best to have fun while doing it. And that's probably the biggest reason why I've been able to succeed. I mean, you know people from your neighborhood, you know people in general that have so much talent, whether it be through athletics, academics, whatever the case may be, but they stand still because they're content with whatever they're doing, or they're just nervous that they're going to
They
fail.
don't have the courage to try.
And they're afraid. They're afraid of rejection, whether it's from a significant other or just in general in life. No one likes to fail, and I get it. I've failed multiple times, but I've
Without failure, there's not success, though.
Yeah,
That's the reality.
Without failure, no one learns.
Yeah.
You know, if you just succeed all the time, and finally some bump comes in the road, people freak out. You gotta actually push to try. And for me, it's worked out really well to where, you know, eventually signed. I met you in the Middle East. You know, and it's out of all places, the Pearl in the desert, and. You know, I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then out of nowhere, just kept on going and kept on going. Little I know, I said yes almost every fight that you know, we've been able to come through together and been able to achieve some crazy things because I tried.
That's right.
And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people, especially in my neighborhood, again, the stereotype is we grew up with drugs, we grew up with violence, we grew up with all this, so we have to stay here. Or, oh, because my dad or my brother was this, I can't do that, so I have to be just like them. It's like you don't have to repeat it. You can use what you grew up with to a different skill later on in life. And for me, I use it for fighting.
All right, cool.
So that's, you know, pretty much my come up. You know, I never gave up. I always pushed through, and I had the right and positive people when I needed them most.
Right.
You know, obviously, I don't know completely deep down your personal upbringing when you were a child, but I know you said...
It wasn't pretty, man.
You said you grew up homeless. I mean, obviously, people naturally look at you now and they go, oh, you're probably a multimillionaire, you're this, you're that, and that's great. Whether that's true or not, it's the fact of there's always some type of struggle.
Yeah.
And what was yours?
You know, it's crazy. Is like, I never really understood the depth of it because my mom really didn't want to exposed me to it. But we were living it, so I knew, right? You know, my mom was 14 years old when she had me. She ran away from, you know, her home. It's crazy. I just found this out recently. I knew my grandfather was abusive and wasn't a great guy. Found an article, and you know, it had his picture in it, and it talked about him being arrested and having spent time in prison, and that he was a con man and basically a crook as a business guy, and so he was, you know, he did time for being like a white collar criminal.
Yeah.
And I haven't even talked to my mom about it yet, because I don't want to drag up the challenge,
the
you know, the emotion of all of that. But you know, I came across it like not long ago, and it actually it hit me in the gut, man, because you know, it's like, you know, the internet, you can find anything, right? And like someone sent it to me, and I was like, holy shit! So I have this thread with all my boys, you know, and I sent it to them. I'm like, man, this just knocked me down, man, and like you know, it hits you, you know, when you learn something like that. But you know, so that's what my mom ran away from, and
but it starts to put like the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, it begins to make a lot more sense, you know. So she runs away from that, and she runs away with a guy who's like in his 30s. She's 14, and he's a drug lord. He has, you know, tons and tons of, you know, the big thing then was some coke, but it was mainly like marijuana, but tons and like literally tons and tons of marijuana, like. And he made my mom a drug mule, and she was carrying drugs all over the country at 14 years old. And she got pregnant at 14, had me at 14. And so, I mean, she probably, you know, had just turned 14 when she ran away. She was a baby. And I was about 3 months old. We were living in the desert in Arizona, and my mom saw that there was like 18-wheeler after 18-wheeler after 18-wheeler coming into the compound, and there was a bomb shelter on the property, and the 18-wheelers were all being unloaded, and it was just all tons and tons of pot, and it was all being put into the bomb shelter. And my mom got freaked out, and she's like, I gotta leave. And so she tells my dad, my biological dad, who I have no recollection of him. You know, he hasn't been part of my life at all, ever. And I've heard some crazy stories about him, but she's like, I gotta go home. Something's happening with my family. And he's like, where do you think you're going? We just had all this pot come in here. Like, nobody's leaving this place.
And now you want to go?
Yeah. He's like, not happening. So she stole $300 from him and snuck out in the middle of the desert with me and like a backpack, basically, walked through the desert and somehow made her way to the airport, caught a flight up to San Francisco, and...
Let's say your mom sounds Mexican.
The migration. She's making the migration.
My high school, we have a daycare center that you have to book 2 years in advance just to get your child in there. So you have to know at the age of maybe 13, 14,
right,
that you're going to have a kid in 2 years.
And probably lots of kids do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, we end up in San Francisco, and my mom takes a cab from the airport to get to the center of town. And as she's getting out of the cab, she gets out on one side with me, and she's going to like get her purse and her backpack suitcase thing, and the cabbie bolts. So she doesn't have any money because her money was in her purse. She doesn't have diapers or anything, you know, changed for me. It's just her at 14 years old with me 3 months old, and she just breaks down and starts crying. She realizes that like she doesn't have anything. She doesn't have anybody. She's totally by herself. And, you know, at that point, like, we're homeless. We don't have any place to go. And it was like that for a while. But a guy who was a transgender guy who was like in mid-process, you know, took us in for a few weeks. And eventually my mom kind of realized she had to go back home because that was the only way that she would be able to raise me. She could have given me up, you know, she never did, and I give her a ton of credit for that. But I mean, that's how we came up, and you know, there was a struggle all along of her trying to make it, you know, but that's how it started, right? And as we kind of grew up together, we were really kind of more friends than you know, parent and child. But
with that age gap.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it was really close, man. Like, so we just kind of grew up, and I was hell on wheels as a kid, man. And I you know, wouldn't come home. Like in high school, I'd be gone for like a week at a time, and like I was just a pain in the ass because I didn't have anybody teaching me. I didn't have parameters. My mom was working her ass off trying to provide, so she couldn't parent, and frankly, she didn't know how to because she wasn't much older. You know, but to her credit, man, she at least made it so that we could have a roof over our head, and you know, she really tried, and eventually, you know what, I realized that I wasn't gonna make anything of myself unless I did something pretty drastic. So I joined the Marine Corps.
And it's not to compare you to my father and really you know, compare you to that age gap, but my father didn't grow up with a dad.
Yeah.
And his mother had to do crazy things.
Yeah.
You know, and so she did whatever she thought was right to pretty much.
And who's to who's to judge what's right or wrong of someone in those circumstances when they're just trying to survive, man. Yeah. You know, and so like I've never really faulted my mom for some of the decisions she made. Like, you know, I wish it would have been different, but at the end of the day, man, I'm the person that I am because of how we came up.
And my father joined the gang, and you ended up joining the military.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously different, but it's that group of camaraderie.
Yeah.
You know, people to support you, your brothers that are there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it really taught me a lot about life. It taught me about accountability and, you know, morals and you know, living by a code. And, you know, it's the way that I live my life now.
Making your bed every day.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like, roll out of bed, and like first thing you do is you make your bed. You know, my wife and kids have no idea what I'm doing, but like literally I'm out of bed 30 seconds and I've made my bed. Just how I start the day. It's the first win of the day, right? It's all mindset. And I got that from the military. But, you know, fast forward, you know, coming up the way that we did to, you know, join the military, and my mom remarried, and she remarried a hell of a man who ultimately at 26 years old ends up adopting me, which is crazy. I'd already had my own life and my own experiences and, you know, living under one name, and at 26 years old, here's, you know, Ed McMahon, celebrity, you know, entertainer, says, hey, I want to adopt you. And I'm like, that's weird. But I was like, in the back of my mind, and like this really like nanosecond of a moment, I was like, man, if this guy, who's what he is, sees in me something that's worth, you know, attaching his name to, who am I to say no? You know, and so I said yes, and it was amazing. You know, I was with him for 20 years before he passed away, and I learned a lot from him. You know, he really was a tremendous role model for me. And I'm fortunate that I had him. But, you know, fast forward through everything I learned in the military, my experiences and relationship with Ed as my dad, to now, you know, like an MBA, a law degree, I've been a C-class officer in companies, been in venture capital and entrepreneur. You know, I've done a lot, man. And I go look back to those humble beginnings and say I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have those humble beginnings, because it's what made me hungry. Once I understood that there was more, that there was something to really strive for, and that there was a way to get there because of the people who were positive influences in my life. You know, my mom, you know, we butted heads a lot because we were, again, close in age, and I kind of resented her for the way we grew up, and she was lying to me about I still don't know the full story on my dad, like what happened to him. Was he in jail? Was he, did he die? Like at one point my mom told me he died in Vietnam, or actually my grandfather told me he died in Vietnam as a POW. And they were trying to give me I was young, so they were trying to give me a romanticized version of something heroic. And, you know, so I struggled with, having lost my dad and thinking he was, this war hero, but how he suffered as a POW. And then I found out, well, no, that's not true. He was actually a big drug dealer, and, he died of a heroin and morphine overdose. And then it was, well, your dad's in jail. And I've heard this from different family members, and I've never really pushed my mom too hard, because the way I look at it is she lived through that very difficult and trying time, and she's told me what she felt she could, and the rest of it kind of is immaterial, because she got us through it, and so I'm very thankful to her for that. I'm thankful for her teaching me some tenacity, because she was tenacious as hell.
She never let you quit.
No, she never let herself quit, and that was the lesson that I learned, is unwavering tenacity. And then, I'm thankful for having Ed in my life. I'm thankful for my group of friends when I was in high school, because I was such a fuck up. They held me, because there's my guys from football. They kept me on track. I would get in a fight with my mom's boyfriend. I got in a fight with my mom's boyfriend, beat the shit out of him, had to leave the house at, I think I was 17 years old, and my mom. We were living in Beverly Hills, not because my mom could afford it. We were living in like an apartment on the outskirts of Beverly Hills post office is what they called it, and it's where like all the fucking maids and shit live, so that they could go to the rich people's houses, right? So it was a shitty little 2-bedroom apartment, and my mom's boyfriend was living with us, and they lived there so that I could go to the Beverly Hills High School, but anyway, so I get in a fight with my mom's boyfriend because he pushed my mom. And so I lost it. But I was like in a pair of shorts and no shirt, no shoes, nothing. Walked 3 miles to my buddy Ernest's house. Knocked on the door. His mom answered the door, and she's like, "Ernest, it's Lex again." It's like she was used to me showing up in kind of this condition. And he's like, "Hey, man, what happened?" And I told him, and I ended up staying there for like a week. Yeah. And, so I'm thankful for my friends that helped me get through that. I'm thankful for my friends that from the military and college who, as I was growing up, so to speak, and, if I'd make a mistake, they'd hold me accountable, because it's important to be held accountable in life. We all make mistakes, man. We all fuck up. If you don't have someone that keeps you on your moral compass, looking for that true north, you'll veer. No matter how good you are, we all sometimes get lost in what we're doing, right? So the role models for me have been huge, and they've come in a lot of forms.
I think the biggest thing to take out of the story is, one, don't give up, no matter what type of upbringing. 2, there are going to be people in your life that are either going to be mentors, father figures, or people that you just need to guide you in the right place, keep you accountable. And the last thing is, hug your mother. Yeah, for sure, hug your mother, man. My mother was the same way. She spent all of her free time. She could have been doing whatever, but she was, in a sense, stuck with me. Because of her choice, but she looked at my brother and goes, I can't do the same thing for this child. You want to quit karate? No, you're going to go back to karate. Yeah. Well, you want to quit football? No, you're going to get back to football. Yeah, my mom would she would work extra. She would, sacrifice things for herself so that I could have some little thing, because she thought it would give me an edge, a jump, a competitive advantage, And there's another thing, like, I got out of the military and I was ready to go to school, and I was like, when I was in high school, I was kind of a fuck up. I didn't have great grades or anything. Yeah, and so I went to junior college for that first semester out of the military, or first year, but my grades, because I had been in the military, like I understood applying myself, and so I got great grades, in junior college. But I still thought there's no way I'm going to get into a decent school, right? So I was like, I'm going to apply to some Cal State schools and whatever. She's like, no, what school do you want to go to? And I was like, well, UC Santa Barbara would be pretty cool. It's a great school academically, but it's also beautiful. It's right on the coast in California. Hot women, big party school. Like, it checked all the boxes. Yeah. And so I was like, that's probably where she goes, apply. Tell your story and apply. And I did, and I got in. And, so she always kind of pushed me. So she's definitely been a huge part. So, Mom, I'm giving you a hug. I love you. You're the best. You drive me crazy, but I love you. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing is, you gotta try. You don't know how it is until you try. Yep. But that's the come up. All right, the come up. Twins podcast, Lex McMahon, Jose Shorty Torres.
Christian Long, making things happen behind the scenes. Peace.